If you're anything like me, the greatest desire of my heart and life is to live a life that is honoring, fully realizing all that God has for me in my walk with Him and my life on earth. To the day I die, I want to live a life that isn't just a beginner, isn't just good enough, is fully engaged, and living a life that is grown up is all that God dreams. Kevin Myers, the senior pastor of 12 Stone Church, wrote a book called Grown Up Faith, and you're going to want to pick it up, but this is going to give you a little sampler of a series that we did on Grown Up Faith. Why don't you watch now as Kevin teaches in a very exciting, compelling, and an engaging, frankly, humorous fashion. Why don't you watch Kevin now?
Hey everyone, I'm Steve, this is Vivi. We are so excited to have you join us for a 6-week small group journey, and welcome to the first week of your Grown Up Faith small group conversation. Now, whether you're a first timer to small groups or you've been plugged into groups for years, we are so glad that you are a part of this study. We believe there's no better way to experience life change and personal transformation than through a small group community.
We're especially excited for this first session since we will start to unpack some of the basics of what it means to build a firm foundation for your life. And here's what we know to be true. Spiritual maturity begins by taking a hard look at what we have built our life on and then surrendering to the foundation that God has for us.
So, before we dive in, grab your session notes, a pen, and a Bible, and let's tune in to our first week of Grown Up Faith.
Welcome to Grown Up Faith. My name is Kevin Myers, and we are so fired up to have you with us for this small group and our gathering together. Now, you can see that I have a group of people with me. This is kind of a town hall Q&A format that'll be part of our experience. So, everybody here excited? You glad to be here? Yeah, this is going to be fantastic. I've also written a book by the same title, Grown Up Faith. In those pages, I've addressed the 10 core questions of life, because how you answer these 10 core questions forms the foundation of your life and the framework for answering life's most practical questions. You know what most people have never heard? That God answers life's 10 core questions in order in the Bible. See, for many, the Bible it's just a dust-covered puzzling book. But this series on Grown Up Faith is going to put the pieces of the puzzle together for you and transform your life. If you're in college, it will set you up for a bigger and better life. If you're married, this is the missing conversation to align your life with God for all of the practical decisions you have to make. If you're a parent, these 10 core questions of life will revolutionize how you disciple your kids. As parents, if we feel defeated, I don't know how to help my kids grow up in faith. In the midst of a secular world, there's just so much. What do I address? And that's where these 10 questions will help you. Furthermore, when you get done with the book and this small group, you'll not only know how to grow up in your faith, you'll know how to talk to others about faith. I know it's a tall order, but the content of Grown Up Faith is that helpful. Think of it like this. Every house is built on a foundation. Let me just take a moment and kind of draw it out for you. I like to do a little whiteboard draw and work. Every life is like a house, and it's built on a foundation. And if that's the house and this is the foundation, and if you can read my writing, that will help you. Here's what we need to absorb. The house is no stronger than the foundation. No stronger, no better. This was the point Jesus was making in Matthew chapter 7. Your life is like a house. Your life of relationships and career, finances, values, morals, fun, dreams, marriage, family, or eternity. And the house of your life is only as strong as the foundation. And your foundation is how you answer the 10 core questions in life. So we could literally just put 10 core questions right here. That forms the foundation of your life. Now, reading the book Grown Up Faith while you're participating in these sessions won't be a duplicate, but more of a reinforcement. And since the book is 11 chapters that deal deeply with the 10 core questions, you'll get more meat in the book and great conversation here in your small group. So here is the small group. We're asking a distinct approach that we're taking right here among us. I want to show you some basics of becoming a grown-up believer that will help you deal with the questions and the obstacles that come along. And speaking of coming along, you've probably noticed that I am surrounded. I've invited some friends to join me in these sessions to give feedback, to ask questions that come from our teaching and really questions that we have from the day, kind of a main question. So let me give them a chance to wave and say hello. Why don't all of you, you're excited to be here, right? Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be fun. Kind of a town hall environment. And we have small groups joining us. In fact, why don't all of you here say, hello, small groups, loud and proud. You ready? The count 3. 1, 2, 3.
Hello, small groups.
There you go. We're glad to be together. Now, let's dive in. Every day, we face choices and questions that will confuse and confound us if we're just making it up as we go along. We need a God-given framework or foundation that will withstand storms and give us a bigger and better life. So, that takes us back to Jesus in Matthew chapter 7. Jesus was addressing over 30 different subjects in Matthew 5 to 7. But it wraps it all up in Matthew 7, 24 to 27. In fact, let's look at it here. These words I speak to you are not incidental additions to your life, homeowner improvements to your standard of living. They are foundational words, words to build a life on. If you work these words into your life, you are like a smart carpenter who built his house on solid rock. Rain poured out and flooded, a tornado hit, but nothing moved that house. It was fixed to the rock. But if you just use my words in Bible studies and don't work them into your life, you're like a stupid carpenter who built his house on the sandy beach. When a storm rolled in and the waves came up, it collapsed like a house of cards. See, storms come to all of us in life. Storms came to both houses. But in the end, the house surviving or collapsing will depend on your foundation. If, for example, you have faulty and fractured answers to the 10 core questions, then it's like building your life on sand. The house, your life, will look good for a while. The storms of life will come and eventually wash out the sand, and the house comes crashing down. But this doesn't have to be the case in your life. God our Father sent Jesus to rebuild our foundation, to lead us into a grown-up faith, to discover that the main problem is not in the decoration of life, but in the foundation. So he's asking, what are you building your life on? And really more than asking, he's instructing. Build your life on God's solid truths. And then as the storms come, your life will still stand. Your house remains. And we all want a solid life that can endure the storms of life, and that the storms that come and the strength then that comes with a grown-up faith. So whether you've thought about it this way or not, you already have some kind of foundation. Or as we often say, a worldview. In fact, that's what we're going to talk about kind of underneath all this. So I want everybody here and in your small group to say the word worldview. 1, 2, 3.
Worldview.
Yeah, worldview. It's the grid through which you process and handle life. And part of what we will be doing in these sessions is encouraging you to take a hard and clear look at your current worldview. You may discover that you're basically living with a worldview entirely based on your background and experiences with little reference to God's purposes or principles. In other words, shifting sands. And we want to challenge you toward a transformation that hands over everything to God in exchange for a new worldview from His perspective. This will set you up for a solid life. Equally, there are many practical questions where we all need wisdom. And those often feel like they are at the house level of life. And key to growing up is to see that our practical questions in life are built on God's foundation of the 10. In other words, when I get done like drawing, as I did right here, group, and I say, oh, we kind of have the house here. This is where a whole lot of practical questions come in. But those practical questions have to be built on the foundation. So these 6 weeks together will be like a decoder ring that allows you to see how a worldview and practical questions come together as one, like a foundation in a house. And here's the last insight for the house. Practically speaking, God told us how to grow up, and it's rooted in who He is, and then how we think, and then how we act. It's all in a relationship with God that He makes possible, but sometimes we need a little clearer picture to help us see it. For example, there are 3 distinct areas that come together for a grown-up faith. In fact, we could put these, I could put these in the house. I could just take them right here and draw them in the house for you. 3 distinct areas. And I don't know if you can see it, but I'll say it so you can hear me. This would be the mind, one would be the heart, and one would be the will. Those 3 coming together. The heart, the mind, and the will. So what does God really expect of me? Jesus didn't hesitate. He said, the love of the Lord your God with all your mind, all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And love others as yourself. And these 3 elements are practical engagements of a grown-up faith. Your mind, it has to be founded in biblical knowledge. Without the truth, your life gets kind of blown around like a ship without a rudder. But with the foundation of biblical knowledge, you can carve out direction even in high winds. Then your heart. Faith is not merely an intellectual exercise. It's with your heart or spiritual intimacy fully engaged. And you were made for a relationship with God, with your heart or emotions, fully, passionately with Him. Otherwise, our faith gets stuck. Equally, it's your will, or Jesus would call it holy obedience. And He said in John 14, if you love me, you will obey my teachings. And these 3 come together for a grown-up faith. In fact, I would challenge you to a thought. I think the only place that we really grow up is where all 3 come together, where your mind, your heart, and your will intersect. That right there is where we really grow up, when all 3 come together as one. And sometimes we get stuck in emphasizing one of the areas over another. And that right there is going to lead us in our next series of conversations. So as you can see, this is going to be transforming to your faith. And so welcome to week 1 of Grown Up Faith. Now, we've gathered in this town hall type of environment, like a large small group, because we know from hearing these comments or from reading chapter 1 that we can get stuck in our faith, and it helps us to talk about it. So why do people get stuck in their faith? Well, you'll discover that you're not alone in your efforts to grow up. So let's turn to the town hall and let's have some questions together. Let's all dive in. Who has questions? Let's just kind of jump in. You hands up. I'll start. Let's go right here.
Hey, Kevin. My name is Anthony. I am currently a youth pastor right now. And even as a youth pastor, I can find myself entering seasons of being stuck. And so I guess my question is it normal to get stuck in my faith? And is it signs of me being immature when I enter these seasons of being stuck?
Sure, it's a great question. First of all, you look young to me. You're too young to get stuck, right? All right, let's just answer this. Let's just ask this around the group. How many of you have ever gotten stuck in your faith? Let's just hands up, okay? By the way, I think I saw every hand up, and that's true probably for you in small groups. So that's a familiar experience. So all of us are going to get stuck at different seasons of life. And it's not necessarily a sign of immaturity, although we would all confess because we're in process, there are stages yet to go. So let's talk about how we get stuck. One of the reasons we get stuck is because we don't know God's whole purpose. And that's why the grown-up faith is going to be a helpful material for you, because we're going to help you see from Genesis to Revelation, the beginning to the end, what on earth is God doing. And if you don't have your life in the big picture, you get stuck in a small life. Another reason people tend to get stuck is because sometimes we get in patterns or habits or religions or systems that get repeated, and those patterns kind of become so familiar to us that they lose their substance. And we kind of lose a sense of how to keep it fresh and how to stay on track. And we can go into that a little bit deeper. So all of us get stuck, and all of us are on our way to becoming who God created us to become. So that's a familiar place. We get it. Now the question is, how do you keep breaking through? And that's part of this conversation. In fact, I think we have a lot of conversations. So who else? Let's just keep kicking this around. What else do you got? Another, yes?
PK, my name's Susie Evans.
Hey, Susie.
My husband, Jaron, and I have been married for 17 years. We have
Awesome.
2 boys, middle school and high school age, and we both work full time, so pretty busy household. What is your practical advice for ways that I can tell that I'm focusing more on the house and less on the foundation?
Yeah, it's a great question. In fact, I think all of us, when we have this conversation, and I put the drawing up here, which, by the way, did this make some sense to you? This starts to make some sense, doesn't it? And to some degree, when you have the foundation, which really becomes the principles, those are the framework for your values. And you should make decisions in the most practical area of your life based on your values. So what you're trying to do is build a solid foundation on God's values, which really you'll learn a good bit from the 10 core questions. And that helps make your decisions practically in life. Equally, though, the way most people discover is that your practical decisions reveal your values. If I could say it that way, I just don't know a better way to say it. So when you say you want to know, are you really building your practical life on your values? Begin to look at your decisions. What kind of decisions are you making in marriage? What are you making, decisions you're making in family? How you raise your kids, how you spend your time, how you manage your money. The practical decisions in life reveal what you really value. And your values should drive your decisions. That's what you want to see, the interplay between the two. And when somebody says, I believe this about God and faith, but it doesn't translate up in the house, you have to have the courage to say, I probably don't believe what I say I believe. If an adjustment doesn't occur in the house practically, then you probably don't believe it principally. This is the interchange you're trying to create in your life. And we can get deeper into that in the dialogue, all right? Another question.
PK, my name is Gene Urshery, and I've been married to Diane, my beautiful wife, for over 30 years.
Woo! We're
Thank
moving
you.
up. We got.
Thank you. We have 2 grown children and also 2 beautiful granddaughters. My question to you is, building a foundation seems like something you would do early in life. As a senior citizen, is it too late for me to rebuild my foundation?
That's an honest question. Yeah. In fact, I think all of us have a sense of, am I too far behind in the journey wherever I get in? And one of the truths, first of all, is this. All of us are in process. There's no arrival in this. So it's important dispositionally that you have a sense, well, nobody really arrives in this on earth. So the answer to the question is, the earlier you get it, the better your life will be. But whenever you start to get the truth, God begins to grow you up, and your life gets bigger and better from there on. I had a dear saint, is what I called her. Her name was Daisy Arnold, and she started coming to the church when we were about 80 to 90 people, and she was 40 years senior. And here's what she told me. I asked her, I said, at some point in your life, do you quit growing? I mean, does it get easier? And she says, no, there's more of God to know, so you're never done. And she said, I feel like I'm learning as much in my 60s, and then she turned 70 before she passed away, than I have at any other time in my life. So I think God would say, no, whenever you jump in, He'll form it in you, and there's still more of God to discover and learn. But great question. All right, somebody else.
Hey PK, I'm Carol Crew, and I'm married to Cecil back here.
Okay.
We've been married 17 years. We have 3 sons, and we have 3 grandchildren and 2 on the way in January.
Yes.
So my question is...
Yes! Coming in January. I have one coming in January. All right, we'll celebrate together.
Absolutely.
This is great.
So the three areas, the heart, the mind, and the will, which of those areas would you say to tackle first? And does God care where I start?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, really good question. When we put the mind, the heart, and the will, and even when Jesus gives us instruction, these all work together as one. We break them apart so that we can understand them, unpack them, and get insight. But they operate together. I'll tell you this. I don't know if this is helpful, but for me, the mind has always been the lead. Getting the truth and getting my mind right, that's been the beginning. That's always been the lead. Then, I don't know, it's somewhere between the will and the heart tends to be second. My heart, kind of my passion connecting with God, will sometimes follow the truth, and it becomes easier to obey the will of God and surrender. My other times, it feels like my heart just isn't connecting, but it's the truth, and if I will engage my will and say yes to God, trust Him even if I don't fully understand it, my heart tends to follow. But the idea is that they all come together as one. So we'll separate them, but we bring them together as one. This is growing up faith, but great question. Okay? Somebody else. Okay? Right here.
Hey, my name's Trevor. I'm a college student. I know what God has called me to do, but I'm in this phase of my life where I have to wait to get there almost. And a part of being grown up, I've heard this my entire life, is grown-ups do what they don't want to do. And so how does that apply to worship? Because like I have the mind where I know I need to worship God and pray and have my quiet time, and that's the person I want to be, but sometimes I just don't feel like doing it. So how do I fill in that heart piece?
Yeah. Faith, it's really a good question, by the way. It's a really honest question. Faith has the capacity to become mechanical. And so the very habits and practices that help form our faith and sustain it can become the very things that become too mechanical for us. Now, those mechanics matter, but you want to keep those fresh and engaged and alive. So sometimes God puts you in seasons of life where you almost go through a dry season. And in that dry season, God wants you to dig deeper. One of the things God did several years back, I hit a dry season. I mean, this was probably in my 30s. And I wonder, why am I in this dry season? So I'm doing all the mechanics. Here was the trigger. I felt like God said, keep doing the mechanics, but add some changes. Stay, wait on me, listen to me. There's places I want to take you. And He dried up a well. That's what I call it. He dried up the well. I couldn't get any water. I couldn't get any fresh from the Lord. And at the end of that season, I think He broke through. He said, I wanted you to dig deeper. I wanted you to dig a deeper well. So I let the well dry up that you're used to tapping into so that you would form new habits, engage me more intensely, and I could give you something more refresher deeper down. Sometimes the mechanics and the system kind of shut down, kind of come to an end, they're not engaging. And God says, I just want you to dig deeper. And in that, these mind, heart, will elements wake up. Good question. We've been having a great time in this town hall Q&A moment together, but it's your turn. So now you have a kind of a guide to help you walk through the next session of conversation. This has been wonderful. It's going to be fantastic when you jump together. So let me turn it over to you guys. Have a great dialogue. Have an honest conversation as God transforms you and takes you to the next level.